Welcome to the College Investor Audio Show, where we talk about the biggest issues impacting millennial money, from student loan debt to side hustles to building wealth. We will show you how to get out of debt so that you can build real wealth for the future.
Welcome to the show. Today we take a look at Gen Z and millennial age range, and what does it mean financially speaking. First, a quick word from our sponsor. A credit union that offers Bitcoin? Give me 5. For a limited time only, get $5 of free Bitcoin through the Southland Credit Union app. Enrollment is quick and easy. There's no hidden fees, and you can conveniently fund Bitcoin purchases directly from a Southland account. Claim your free crypto today by going to thecollegeinvestor.com/Southland. Bitcoin accounts and services provided by NYDIG. Not NCUA insured. Restrictions apply to Bitcoin bonus. See terms. And don't forget to check out thecollegeinvestor.com/Southland to sign up. All right, so generational cohorts can be a great lens to view social and economic trends. Understanding how boomers differ from Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z can help make sense of society. Of course, lumping entire cohorts into generations can also lead to fascinating and inaccurate stereotypes of entire groups of people. So as Generation Z, which is people born between 1997 to 2012, enter the workforce, it's worthwhile to consider how this cohort differs from millennials. We also dig into some of the stereotypes of each generation to see whether the numbers substantiate the claims. First, some generational quick facts. Check this out. So, understanding a generation starts with understanding what the typical person in the cohort looks like. Here are some quick facts that compare millennials and Gen Z. So the birth years for millennials, 1981 to 1996. Gen Z, like we just talked about, 97 to 2012. Current age range, 26 to 41. 10 to 25 for Gen Z. Median income, 71,000 or so to just under 90,000 for millennials, and just a little above 48K for Gen Z. Percentage with a bachelor's degree, 39% for millennials, and that's still kind of to be determined for Gen Z. Average student loan debt, 38,000 for millennials, and just a little above 17K as of 2021 for Gen Z. Now, of course, a lot of those in Gen Z are not in college yet. As of now, millennials are among the highest wage earners in the U.S. Yay, me! And they are also the most educated. No. We are also the most educated. Boom. Generation Z is just launching into the workforce for now, but so far has lower student debt loads than millennials. Smart, Gen Z. That said, debt loads of graduates continue to increase year over year. So Gen Z might see student loan balances actually increase if they return to school in large numbers. Of course, these numbers could change. In particular, we might see more members of Gen Z returning to school and taking on debt to complete their formal education. Millennial and Gen Z similarities. Let's take a look at those now. Millennials and Generation Z may be different cohorts, but they share two important characteristics that may shape workplaces and the economy as a whole. Off to an economic slow start. A large proportion of millennials saw their professional growth stymied by the dot-com bubble bursting, remember, 2000 to 2002, the housing collapse of 06 and 07, and relatively slow economic recovery. Hampered by student loans and a sluggish economy, millennials delayed major milestones, marriage, first child, buying a house, compared to previous generations. It appears that Gen Z may face similar sluggish conditions as they enter the workforce. Following a decade of economic growth, Gen Z's first college graduates entered the workforce just months before the economy shut down for COVID. The current recessionary conditions may also hamper growth for Gen Z as they enter the workforce. Earning extra income outside of the day job may prove to be a necessity for many members of Gen Z. Digital natives. Millennials came of age during the first internet explosion and were some of the earliest adopters of social media platforms. Generation Z grew up with internet technology around them and even grew up with streaming platforms and other forms of on-demand entertainment. Digital-first forms of communication like instant messaging, Zoom, text, etc., have already infiltrated American workforces. Generation Z is sure to influence future communication patterns, though they may revolt against the always-on culture and help regulate the constant flow of information. I hope. Appetite for activism. Despite their age, several prominent members of Gen Z have been lauded for their activism on human rights, climate change, and other issues of the day. Most members of Gen Z seem to lean into activism. 70% of the cohort wants the government to do more to solve societal problems. Additionally, 64% of millennials want the same thing. Both millennials and Gen Z show a greater appetite for government intervention compared to older generations. Millennial and Gen Z differences. They have some similarities, but also differ on some important points. Let's take a look at those. Attitudes towards education. At this point, millennials have the most formal education of any generation. As of 2020, 39% had college degrees. By contrast, Gen Z may be warier of the costs and benefits associated with a 4-year degree. Kind of like that about that generation. The shutdowns dramatically reduced college enrollment among Generation Z, with nearly 1 million fewer students enrolling in post-secondary education between 2019 and 2021. It remains to be determined whether Generation Z will continue this trend or reverse it as COVID-based restrictions continue to loosen. If Gen Z reverses the trend towards increasing formal education, the generation may avoid the burdensome debt that plagues so many millennials. Millennials may receive large inheritances. That's a key difference here. So between 2021 and 2045, millennials are likely to be the largest recipients of the Great Wealth Transfer. Boomers currently have more than $70 trillion in assets that will likely be bequeathed to their millennial children. However, this wealth is largely concentrated among the ultra-wealthy and may not have broad implications for the typical millennials. Like me, workforce composition. Millennials are currently the largest contributors to the U.S. workforce, around 35% of the total as of 2018, and will remain the largest share of workers for the next few decades. Workplace culture is likely to lean more toward millennial preferences until Generation Z joins the workforce in larger numbers. Remember, some Gen Z are still like 10, 11, and 12. Millennial financial stereotypes, and whether they are true. Stereotype number 1, millennials failed to launch. The failure to launch stereotypes appears to be grounded in reality. According to one study by the Pew Research Center, millennials aged 25 to 34 were 50% more likely to live with their parents compared to Generation X at the same age. Millennials don't care about owning a home. For many years, millennials lagged previous generations in home ownership compared to when those generations were a similar age. However, the lack of home ownership was not because millennials didn't want to own homes. Rather, lack of financial readiness locked many millennials out of home ownership during early adulthood. A 2021 study from the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College shows that by age 38, 60% of millennials own homes. This is only slightly below home ownership rates of boomers and Gen X at age 38. Millennials who haven't yet purchased a home may want to consider house hacking if they still want to own. Millennials don't save enough. It's always tough to evaluate whether a person is saving too much or too little, but generationally, millennials may lag previous generations in their wealth accumulation. Millennial wealth relative to their income roughly mimics the boomer savings rate when they were aged 28 to 38. The difference is that boomers accelerated their savings rate in later years. Millennials are drawing in student loan debt. A lot. Student loans emerged as a debt problem with the millennial generation. Previous generations had student loan debt, but millennials took on student loans on a scale that hadn't been seen before. 40% of millennials have student loans, and their average balance is equivalent to 43% of their annual income. Ouchie. Another stereotype you may have heard, millennials job hop too much. Millennials have long been considered a generation of job hoppers. They don't plan to stay at one company for decades and collect a pension. The recent Great Resignation may add fuel to the claims that millennials are frequent job hoppers. The numbers play out differently, though. Research shows that millennials change jobs less frequently than previous generations. The low job rates of job transitions could be due to the sluggish economy that millennials experienced when they first entered the workforce. Let's take a look at some Gen Z financial stereotypes and whether they're true. Only a small portion of Gen Z has reached full adulthood, and the generation entered into adulthood as the world shut down for COVID. So far, the generation hasn't had a lot of time to develop positive or negative stereotypes. But these are just a few that may shape the economy. Generation Z doesn't see the value in college education. Before COVID hit, Gen Z was on track to be the best educated generation in history. More than 57% college-eligible individuals were in school in 2018, compared to 52% of millennials at comparable ages. But nationwide, college enrollment took a major hit when COVID-19 led to nationwide restrictions. Between 19 and 2021, college enrollment dropped by 6.6%, with more than 1 million students dropping out in that time frame. Despite the lower enrollment, it remains to be seen whether this is a blip or whether future members of Gen Z forego the 4-year education. Gen Z will never come into the office. Working from home was an oft-sought perk of previous generations, but the elder members of Gen Z never had to earn the right to work from home. Those that have office jobs are likely working in hybrid or fully remote positions. So will Generation Z ever come into the office? The generation may expect workplace flexibility, but high schoolers don't rate it as a very important factor right now. In a survey of high schoolers, just 23% rated the ability to work remotely as a very important part of a future job. Generation Z has a short attention span. Various forms of clinical research have concluded that Generation Z has an 8-second attention span on certain types of activities. However, by the same measures, millennials last just 12 seconds. Gen Z may suffer from short attention spans, but they may also have developed more skills for filtering out unnecessary information. Generation Z grew up with Wi-Fi-enabled cell phones and social media. They are the first generation to have experienced the always-on phenomenon associated with constant online connectedness from childhood. Whether Gen Z's goldfish brain is a help or hindrance in the workplace remains to be seen. Final word? As Gen Z enters adulthood, the generation is likely to be influenced by economic forces outside of their control. Whether the cohort eschews formal education and the accompanying student debt remains to be seen. However, millennials and Generation Z share some similar characteristics that are likely to shape the economy as a whole. And that is our show for today. It was enlightening for me, and I hope it was for you. If you have Gen Z millennial friends who think this could be very enlightening information as well, please feel free to share. And maybe some grouchy boomers can use this info as well. Thanks so much for stopping by today. If you want to find out more, dig a little bit deeper, we have some links to all the resources and the numbers we talked about today at thecollegeinvestor.com. Just copy-paste the title of the podcast right into the search bar, and you'll find it. Again, that's thecollegeinvestor.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll talk to you again real soon.